So hi, hello everyone. Welcome to another session and our talks with the Digital Innovation Incubator. Today with us, we have Ajay Kohli. I hope I pronounced the name right.
Perfect.
Hello, Ajay.
Hi, Philip. How are you?
Great, perfect. It's really nice to see you and to be able to talk with you today. So if we could just start off with a couple of words about yourself so that the students have the chance to know you better.
Okay, thank you very much, Philip. First of all, thank you for inviting me to do this little piece. I appreciate that very much. I hope this will be of help to the students who are going to be viewing it. But by way of introduction, I just like to say that I am a professor at Georgia Tech here in Atlanta, United States. And by way of background, I am an electrical engineer, followed by an MBA, and I worked for industry, primarily in sales and marketing, for about 5 years before deciding to get my PhD, which I did. And then I taught after that at University of Texas, Austin, then for many years. And then I taught at Emory University here in Atlanta. And here we are. I'm at Georgia Tech. I've been here for like 14 years or so, and enjoying the work very much.
Okay, perfect. That's a humble introduction for everything that you've done and accomplished throughout your career. But let's leave that to students so they can do their research on their own. So today, I think we wanted to talk about the process of creating value for the customer and how to introduce something to the market. So first, I would like for us to talk about and for you to describe the process of how does one come up with an idea for something that is innovative, for a product or a service, like where to start?
Yeah, so this is a long discussion, but let me start at the very beginning. So obviously, we have to have some idea of a product or a service that could potentially be of value to some customers at least. So where do you get that idea from? This is a very tricky question, but fundamentally, an idea for an innovation, most of the time, not always, but most of the times, comes from having some knowledge about some customers or some thing that is going on in the marketplace. And you don't have to go out and do very detailed research about any customer or a marketplace, what competition is doing, what's happening with technology, how can you leverage technology. You have some general ideas, and based on these general ideas, you come up with, let's say, a service concept, or maybe a product concept. You might say, well, gee, maybe there's this new technology now that can connect customers with suppliers, and maybe I can come up with some sort of a platform to connect them. That might be an idea. Now, where did that idea come from? It comes from beginning with some understanding of what's going on in the marketplace. And when I say marketplace, I mean what kind of new technologies are coming up, what are some customer problems that exist, what are some competitors doing that you could add on, and so on. So you have to get a germ of an idea before you can start going forward. And the germ of the idea comes from general understanding of what's going on in the world around us. So now, the thing is, once you come up with some germ of an idea, then you have to start asking the question, is this thing going to add value to a customer? Is this going to create value to a customer or not? And so that begs the question, what exactly is customer value or value to a customer? And so you can think about create value to a customer as comprising of four things actually. Number one is your product can help customers do something better. So, for example, you might come up with a car design that gives you better gas mileage. So that would be a benefit to the customer. Or you could come up with some idea for increasing the reliability of a operation or a product or something. So these are what I'd like to call benefits that help a customer do some things better or faster or with greater reliability or something like that. So that's number one. And number two, you can come up with an idea that reduces the cost of manufacturing or the cost of some operation that the customer is engaging in right now. So, for example, you could come up with a new raw material that reduces the cost of manufacturing a product, or or you could come up with a new technology by which you have to replace some parts less frequently and thereby save some money. Or, for example, we're talking on a video conference right now. I mean, it's unbelievable. We don't have to travel and pay all that money just to talk with each other. We can do it on Zoom. So that's another idea where you can do something cheaper. So the second bucket then for value is, can I reduce the cost to the customer in some shape or form? And then the third bucket of value is, can I reduce the risk to a customer? So, so for example, a customer may have some operations that are going on and their operations fail, every 2 months, let's say. And when their operations fail, they incur a lot of cost. So if I can reduce the frequency with which their operations fail, or I can reduce the likelihood of operations failing, then I am making their operations safer or less risky, if you will. So this is the third bucket of value. So in my engineering mindset, if I had to write an equation, I would say customer value equals benefits that you can provide, meaning what they gain, minus the costs that they are incurring right now, meaning what they lose, minus the risk that they are facing right now, meaning these risks are basically costs that they may or may not incur. So that's one way to think about customer value. So this is the notion of customer value. But when it comes to innovation, the most powerful innovations are not things that help customers do things better or cheaper or safer. They are, but the most valuable things are when you can help a customer do things that they could not do earlier. That is huge. So let me give you an example of this. So before the iPhone came along, if we had to go on the internet, we had to go to the desktop and connect to the web and so on. And but when iPhone came along and you could access the whole web on your phone, no matter where in the world you were, no matter what time of the day or evening it was, very conveniently. Now that is a very powerful innovation because we could not do that without the iPhone. We could not connect or speak on the web before the iPhone came along. So when you can enable a customer do things that they could not do previously, not just that is huge. Of course, it's also helpful to help customers do what they're doing right now better, cheaper, safer, no problem. That is innovation. That's important. But really powerful innovations are things that they cannot do right now, and you make them do that. So I would say you kind of think about that seed of the idea that you had come up with. You pass it through these screens. Is that idea, product concept or a service concept, is that going to help customers do something better, cheaper, safer, or something totally new. And so once you start thinking about that, don't think about customers in a very generic way. Don't kind of say, well, there are so many customers out there, they would like this product or they would like this service. That is a trap. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is pick a very specific customer, a very particular customer, a particular company, and then understand that company and go observe them, go talk to them, understand their pain points, and then sort of ask the question, okay, this idea that I have for a product or service, will it work for this particular customer? Not some abstract general customers out there, but for this customer. Will it work for Volkswagen? Will it work for this agri company? Will it work for this tech company, particular company? And what's going to happen is when you immerse yourself in that particular company, you will learn all sorts of things from the company. You may learn that your idea is simply not going to work, or you may learn that the idea that you have is needs to be modified a little bit before it can work for this particular company. So then you kind of modify that idea, or you reject that idea completely when you immerse yourself in a customer's operations, people, their logistics, their websites, whatever. And then what happens is you might get some new ideas for new products or other services that you could offer. So basic point really is you have to have the germ of an idea, and then you have to check it with the reality of a particular customer, modify that idea, check it again with the customer, modify that idea, check it again with the customer, or come up with a totally new idea, check it with that customer, and keep iterating until such time as you say, aha, now I can see that this idea that I have, this concept that I have, will actually add value to a customer, meaning help them do things better, cheaper, safer, or new things. So that's kind of what the process looks like. So over here, one very important thing is if you try to visualize the customer actually using your product or using the service, imagine the people there actually using the product, actually using the service, and how their operations or their lives or their experience becomes better, then you have greater likelihood of success rather than just at an abstract level saying, well, they can improve their operations or they can improve their experience or they can reduce costs. No, look at it very concretely, very specifically, whether that is actually happening or not. And I should note that, Steve Jobs famously said, don't talk to customers because they don't know what is possible. And he's right. Sometimes customers, in fact, don't know what they want because they don't know what is possible. And there we have to use our imagination to come up with new concepts of products or services and check whether they're going to be adding value or not. And sometimes, though, customers know, they can tell you, there's a concept called lead customers, but sometimes customers know what they want, but they can't find it in the marketplace. And so they will tell you what they want. So it works both ways. So basic point really is you can come up with innovative ideas on your own, or you can ask customers for ideas for product concepts or service concepts. But then once you have this germ of an idea, check it with the reality of a customer and ask, will this really create value or not? And you keep going back and forth between modifying that idea, checking it with the customer, keep iterating until such time as you settle on a product or a service idea that will be in fact valuable. And then one last thing I would say over here is that, this process is very messy. It's not linear. It's not step one, step two, step three. Innovate, as people in your institute know, innovation is a very messy process, and there's no linearity to it. It goes all over the place, and that is perfectly fine. That's just the way things work. You can talk with other people around you, pardon me, as well, to sort of keep modifying your ideas and keep pivoting. That's the word. Keep pivoting from one product concept to a modified one to a yet modified one. But after all this is done, you need to boil it down into a simple, very compelling value proposition. So you do all this mess, you go through all this process, but in the end, you want to be able to say something very simple, very clear, because if you can't do that, customers are not going to buy. So this value proposition is a very simple statement where you kind of say, who is going to be my target customer, or who is going to be my target customer segment? Yeah, pardon me. So you can't just say, well, the whole world will buy it. No, you need to know exactly who will be interested in this product or service concept. So that's the target customer. And then you need to clearly say, how much value will your product or your service concept deliver to the customer? Meaning, how much faster can they do some operations? How much more reliable will they be? How much cost will they save? How much more revenues would they be able to generate because of your innovation, your product, or your service that you're offering? So you got to get very concrete with the benefits that you're going to be offering, or the cost reduction, or the risk reduction, or the new things that your product will help them do very clearly. Because if you can't state that very clearly, then the target customer will just not buy. They will not be interested. Yeah. So those two things are critical. Who's the target customer? What is the very specific benefit or cost reduction or risk reduction or new activity that your product will deliver? And then the third part of this is, who is their next best alternative? Meaning, right now, they are doing something. So you have to compare what your product or service will help them do versus what they're doing currently, or versus the next best alternative they have. Because that's how the customer is going to look at your innovation. How much better, how much better is the innovation relative to what they're already doing, or they could be doing? So that's very critical. And then one last part over here is, customers will want to know, what is the proof? What is the proof point? Why should they believe you that your product or your service can do a better job than the next best alternative for them? And here you have to have some data, some use cases, some endorsements perhaps. So you have to have some basis on which the customers will say, okay, this one actually is not fluff, it's real. So that's kind of what I would suggest. Start with a germ of an idea. It's a very fuzzy process. You iterate between coming up with ideas and checking their validity with actual customers, not vague general customers. Keep modifying your ideas, keep checking until you think you've come up with something. It may be something that you come up with. It may be something that the customer asks you for. It may be a combination of the two, but finally you come up with something, and you crystallize it in a value proposition that states four things. Number one, who is the target customer? Number two, what is the key value that you offer? One or two things, not too many. One or two key value that you will offer relative to the next best alternative. And then the last part is, why should the customer believe you? What proof do you have that the value that you're proposing will in fact deliver value to the customer? So I'd say, yeah, go ahead.
I would like to just ask you, and for a little bit, just to refer about that value proposition and the value perspective of that value. So a lot of times, companies, startups specify that value from their own perspective. How important is it to actually specify that value proposition and what you bring to the customer from the customer's perspective? So I would say how important it is and why.
Yeah, I think that's the whole ball game. There is no point specifying the value that you think there is in your product. No, you have to specify it from the customer's perspective. How much value will the customer see in your product or service? And that's the reason why we come up with the value proposition. The first thing we state is who is the target customer and will they see the value that you are proposing, or will they not see the value that you're proposing? So actually, this value proposition, let me frame it as a statement that may make this point a little bit clearer, the one that you're asking, Philip. So the value proposition would be filling in 4 blanks. So it would be something like XYZ customers, that's your target, whoever the XYZ is. XYZ customers will prefer to buy my innovation, the product or service, over blank ABC competitors, which is the next best alternative they have. Could be what they're doing right now, could be something else they could purchase to do. So they'll prefer to buy my innovation over ABC competitor because we offer 1 or 2 values like PQR, that's the value, higher reliability, lower cost, lower risk, new activity, whatever. What's that value? 1 or 2 things. We are as evidenced by some case studies or data or endorsements. So if that one statement you can fill out, it's a very simple statement, but it's a very powerful statement. And it injects the customer perspective in there because now you're forced to think about the target customer rather than just think about your own product or your own service, how cool it is and how much value it offers. Nobody cares. What matters is what the customer cares. And that's why when you write it down as a value proposition with those 4 parts, the first thing is who is the customer? And if you haven't specified that, then nothing makes sense.
So
does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So once you develop something, meaningful, something that is novel and meaningful at the same time, you have to introduce it to the market. You specify value proposition, and then you hope that some customers, your target customers, adopt that product or service, that they actually buy it and use it. So what do we have to keep in mind? What sort of, let's say, product service characteristics should we keep in mind in order for that something that we developed gets adopted by our target customers?
That's a great question. That's really a great question because the mistake that a lot of people make is that they focus only on how much additional value that we are offering over some alternative that the customer has. And that is obviously fundamental because if you don't offer some advantage relative to what they're currently doing or what they could be doing, there's no reason for them to buy your product or service, right? So that's number 1. But there are 4 other things that you have to be concerned about. So the first one is complexity. And this is, by the way, if you want to look it up, Rogers has summarized these very well. But the second thing, apart from the advantage that you offer, you have to look at complexity. How complex is the product or service? How complicated is it? How confusing is it? So how complex is it to understand what the product is or the service is that you're offering? And, I've been working with some startup companies, actually as recently as yesterday. The biggest challenge they have is articulating what exactly is the product. And I don't want to get into too much detail here, but they go off into technology. Oh, we can do XYZ, we can do this, that, and the other, and we can link up these databases. And they just keep talking about what they can do, but they don't explain what exactly is the product. Is it hardware? Is it software? Is it a combination of the two? What are you selling? What are you trying? What are you going to try to get some money from customers for? Is it the hardware, or is it hardware as a service? Is it software or package, or what are you selling? Even that is not very clear. So if you make your product or offering very complex to understand what is it that you're doing, then it's like customers are going to say, well, sounds good, but I don't know what the heck you're talking about. Go away. I don't have time for you. So you have to make your product or service offering very simple to understand. It may require a lot of technology at the back end, no problem, but the offering should be very simple to understand, number one. And the other aspect of complexity is how difficult is it to use? So let's say you've come up with, let's say, some software or some algorithm or whatever. How easy or difficult is it for customers to use that product? Because if it's going to be hard to use, it's not going to be received very well by customers, obviously. Yeah? So this is something that a lot of people don't appreciate. So far we've talked about two things: how much relative advantage your innovation offers over next best alternative. Number two, how complex your offering is and how complex it is to use. Number three is, again, this is the least appreciated factor. It's called compatibility. And you have to ask the question, how compatible is your offering compared to what the customer's currently doing? So here, let's say a customer is accustomed to doing some task in a certain way. Now, if your innovation is going to require the customer to throw away that process completely and do it completely differently, well, that's going to be a problem. But on the other hand, if you got an innovation that can just tack on to what they're doing right now, just make a little tweak here. You don't have to change any machines or any instruments. You just have to sort of, do one little tweak, and then all of a sudden the benefits come in. That's going to be received very well. So how compatible is it with your current tasks that the customer does? And at the consumer level, I know you're not too interested in the consumer level, but at the consumer level, is it compatible with their value system? Do they think that's a good thing to do or not? But basically, I think the main thing you want to keep in mind is compatibility with their current way of doing things is always helpful, unless you have a massive innovation that gives you so much advantage that consumers or customers say, okay, fine, I can save 50% cost, so I can double my profits. Okay, fine, I'll change how I do things. But most innovations don't fall there. So compatibility becomes very important. And a couple other things. One is trialability. So if you come up with a product or a service that a customer can easily try out, then they're more likely to adopt it. They're more likely to buy it eventually because they can try it out and reassure themselves that this is not fluff, this is real. And once they see the benefits, once they see the cost reduction, once they see the safety, once they see what new things they can do, they're much more likely to adopt it. So, that is important. And then there's a second reason why trialability is important. It's not just because it reduces risk, but second reason is when you give something nice to a customer and they get some value out of it, some product or some service, then the endowment effect kicks in, meaning once they have experienced that pleasure of working better, cheaper, safer, then they don't want to let go. So the example I would give you is way back, I had gone to buy a car from a car dealer, and I was hemming and hawing what price, this, that, and it was a nice car, but I wasn't sure. So you know what, the car deal, I still remember this. This is 30 years ago. I still remember this. So the car salesman said, I know you're not sure. That's okay. Why don't you take the car home? And if you decide to keep it, wonderful. If you decide you don't want it, just bring it back next day. No problem. No charge, nothing. And I said, well, you trust me with the car? I'm going to take it home. And he said, no problem, take it. So I took the car home and I drove it home. Obviously, the car drove it around for a few hours, and I liked it. I didn't want to let go of the car because it was so good. So I tried it out, and once I had it in my garage, I didn't want to let go of the car. So trialability is very, so if you come up with a software, if they can try it out and they can see how quickly they can do things or do new things, well, that's going to be very beneficial in terms of buying. And then the last thing I would say is observability. Like, can people observe the benefits? Customers, can they observe the benefits that the product or service you're offering delivers to customers? Can they visibly see those? So to the extent they can see them, it is more beneficial. Rather, customers are more likely to adopt it. In a consumer context, observability is very powerful. And in a B2B context also to a lower extent. But what happens is, so let's say I get a nice iPhone, iWatch or something. What happens is other people can observe me wearing that watch. And when they observe me wearing that watch and it looks cool and I can call on the phone, I can do things, the other person says, oh, that's cool. Let me also get an iPhone. So if the product can be observed or its benefits can be observed by other customers, potential customers, then it's likely to be adopted much faster. So these are some of the things you want to keep in mind. Go back to what we were saying earlier. When you're modifying the product, iterating between coming up with the product concept and service concept and the customer pain points, what you want to be doing is constantly keeping these ideas. Is it observable? Is it complex? How can I reduce the complexity? Is it compatible with what customers do? Is it not? Can I make it observable? Can I make it trialable? These kind of things should be going through your mind as you're trying to crystallize your value proposition before that.
So what about when you're developing something that is maybe a little bit more complex, or if you have a situation that a customer is maybe on a conscious level not even aware of the problem, or first you have to bring it up that the problem even exists. So do you have maybe some inputs or insights how to approach the customers when maybe the next best alternative is not so clear, or you're basically using something else to solve this problem? So how to connect the dots for the customer and basically explain what we are all about?
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing, but you have to manage it very delicately. Let me explain what I mean by that. See, let's take a B2B example. Let's say there's some, I don't know, some equipment that the customer's using, let's say, or some way in which they're processing data, let's say. Let's take digital data processing. And let's say your idea is to have a different software that can help them process that information faster, let's say. So now what happens? So they don't know that they have a problem. right? So you realize that they have a problem. So if you go to the customer and say, hey, I can help you do this thing better, what's going to happen is someone in that company, in that customer, has decided to use some software or some machine or whatever, right? So that person will feel threatened because now you are coming up and saying, hey, you're not doing your job as good as you could be doing. So that
I can
becomes
do
a
it
bit of
better
a,
for you.
yeah. So exactly. So then what happens is you have to manage that very delicately and position it not as you have a problem and you're so stupid you don't even know it, but rather you have to position it as you, Mr. X, uh, have done a wonderful job with whatever you're doing right now because that's all that there was when you made that decision. And then say that was a wonderful decision, and I'm sure your organization appreciated that because you could do whatever. But now let me help you become a hero in your company. Now you I can help you look even better in your company with my innovation. So rather than say that you're doing something wrong and I can help you fix it, you say what you're doing is justified, but now you can gain even more brownie points within your company by championing this innovation that's going to help you and others around you do things even better. So you have to convert that person from a potential detractor to a potential advocate. So it's a little bit of a tricky thing, and that's why I was saying that that if you can help a customer do some things new, then nobody is threatened. Everybody sees the value, and they'll be more willing to adopt the innovation. But if you say, well, I can help you do something better or cheaper or safer, they will see the value, but somebody is going to feel a little bit defensive. So you have to manage that.
In a general sense, do people like to choose innovative products, or they usually want to stick, with the next best alternative and everything that are doing right now? So, like, what is that adoption process? Is it usually harder for something different coming to the market to get adopted, or how does maybe some data or insights that tells us?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. The answer is yes and yes, or no and no, whatever. So the thing is, uh, let's take let's take B2B. Okay. So the thing is, there are some customers, even within an industry. Let's say it's the agricultural industry. There will be some farmers who will be eagerly looking forward to the next better thing or the next innovation that can help them improve productivity, improve quality, get higher yields, get higher prices, or whatever. There'll be some farmers who are like that, but there will the majority of the farmers are going to be, well, I'm making enough money. I I have my process for farming set. I wake up in the morning, I have my coffee, the work gets done. I don't have, why should I mess with this new product or service? Life is good. Let's keep it that way. You can go away. So a lot of people are like that. So the trick is you have to identify those farmers, in this case, those farmers who are looking for something new and innovative so that they can move ahead and pitch your innovation to those farmers. So, how do you know which farmers are going to be? Just look at the history. Who are the farmers who adopted previous innovations faster than the other farmers? So, that gives you a clue. And then once they adopt your innovation, you want to go to the rest of the farmers and say, hey, look at this guy over here. He's getting, 200% higher yield, and you're stuck over here. I mean, this guy's going to grow his market share and wipe you out of the market. Do you want that to happen? And this guy said, "Oh yeah, I'm comfortable, but I see what you're saying. I have to catch up. Okay, come, let's talk." So, so that's a very important question. Even within an industry, you have to choose to initially try to sort of sell to a customer who is, generally speaking, uh, more interested in new things and so forth.
So is there anything, since we're talking about the market adoption process of new products and services and innovations, is there something else that, student innovators would have to keep in mind before going to the market and trying to maybe communicate or create something that has value?
Yeah, yeah. So one or two other things I would say is, we talked about how the mindset of some customers is towards innovation, favorably disposed towards innovation. Others are not so. So that's important. We also talked about, people within the customer organization that might feel threatened by an innovation. So you have to convert them into champions. So you have to look at, what their KPIs are, internal KPIs are, um, uh, as you go about it. So this is all about customers, but you also have to look at external factors. So what do I mean by that? See, anytime you come up with an innovation, um, somebody is going to get uh, hurt by your innovation. So if the customer, let's say, if a customer decides to buy your product, what that means is they're not going to be buying a competitor's product. So your competitor will be threatened by your innovation because they don't have it. You have a better product, they have an inferior product, they will be threatened by it. So your competitor, you can almost bet on it, will try to persuade your target customer that your innovation is really not that good, or it can be a problem, it's a hassle. Why would you get rid of the tried and tested that they've been selling to them? So there's all kinds of messaging that they will provide. So you have to be prepared for that, and you have to have a counter argument for all those things that the competitors will be talking about. Second thing that you have to be clear about external to the customer and external to you, is complementers. So let's say you come up with some nice hardware, let's say some device, and um, and you don't have the software to run that device, and you need external parties to develop that software. So the success of your innovation will be a function of whether you can get these complementers to come aboard and appreciate the vision that you have for what collectively the hardware and software could do for a customer. So you have to worry about, can you find those complementers? And on the more positive side, you can also think about external influencers. So in a B2B setting, for example, on social media, there's so many influencers who kind of say, "Oh, I've tried this product, it's really good, buy it." So like that, there are consultants in a B2B situation, like technical consultants or business consultants. They could be a good, powerful influence who could recommend your product to B2B customers. And this is what you would fill out in your value proposition, the last part. Why should they believe you? Because this consultant who is famous, or technical consultant who's famous, he or she is saying this is a great way to improve your processes or whatever you're trying to accomplish. So that's, yeah, I'd say that's I'd say that's probably what I would be thinking about.
So I would just a final remark on when you're communicating something innovative, something that can change the customer's lives. Uh, do customers, let's say that you have the data, use cases, and everything. Is it better to communicate, let's say, directly? Are they going to trust you, or maybe use some external influencers, validation from others or other customers that can persuade and, let's say, use the word of mouth So are customers more likely going to believe a company or a startup that's selling something innovative, or are they more likely to, believe others, or maybe some other huge players or other customers that are going to, sell it for you? So what would be the best approach in that sense?
Yeah. So again, that's a great question. Uh, you will have lower credibility. You as the person who's coming up with the innovation will have lower credibility compared to a quote unquote neutral third party. So a consultant or a lab that has done some testing, they'll have more credibility. But that doesn't mean that you are not going to explain your innovation and what it can do for the customer directly. You have to do that, but then add on that external influence, if you will, and actively work to get the external third parties, give them your product for testing so that they can report the results, give them your product, your competitor's product, let them test it out and send the results. So if you've done your homework well, the report from them will be good and they'll have more credibility. And if they communicate that to a target customer, then you've got best of both worlds, because from you, the customer will learn more about the product and what it does and so on. And from them, the customer will get validation of everything that you've been talking about. So I'd say it's a combination of the two that you probably should think about.
Yeah, thank you, Jay, for all the inputs. Do you have maybe some final regards, messages to students that are going to start their innovation journey?
Yes, it's a very frustrating journey, but it's a very fulfilling journey once you finish the journey. Once you're at the end of the journey, so what do I mean by that? So what I mean by that is when you start on the journey, there'll be a lot of messing around, a lot of, like dead ends. You try something, it doesn't work. You try another thing, doesn't work. So it's really frustrating to come up with lots of ideas and only to realize that they won't work. But that's no reason to stop at all, because when you reach a dead end, it's really not a dead end. What it is telling you is that path one didn't work, path two didn't work, path three didn't work. And that's good information, because in the future, you don't want to go down those paths. You take a different path. And one of these paths, if you persist, will work. And when it works, it's so fulfilling, it's so exciting, it's terrific. But even these failures, until the failure happens, it's very exciting. Until that failure, it's, oh God, what happened? But that's okay. So when you hit a dead end, you just say, well, we learned something. Let's move on. We got to keep trying till we can hit success. So don't let the dead ends or road bumps or speed bumps or failures or whatever bother you. That's just the process, and just keep marching ahead, and you will hit the end point. And that is really such a joy. So go for it.
Thank you, Ajay, for all your inspiration, all your insights, and being part of this project. And hope to see you soon here in Croatia.
Thank you very much, Philip. Appreciate it, and all the best to everybody, to you and the students who might be listening to this thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.